Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take these huge stacks of research, archaeological data and cognitive studies, and we try to distill them into the most fascinating conversation you'll have all week.
And today, our mission is to connect two seemingly very different parts of human history.
Right.
We are linking the earliest, really gritty survival tactics, how our ancestors actually ate, to the eventual emergence of complex symbolic thought, art, and what we now call religion.
And the sources for this are just incredible. We have cutting-edge archaeology that is, it's actively overturning decades of assumptions.
It really is. And we're pairing that with cognitive science and phylogenetic studies that map the deep, deep history of human belief.
So we're tracing this intelligence from, ancient rock art in Patagonia, all the way to the ivory carvings of the Bering Strait. It's a huge scope.
It is. And we're going to unpack two monumental shifts for you. First, we have to completely redefine what we call the hominin predatory pattern. It's much more about clever opportunism than, brave hunters.
And
Second, we'll show that symbolic culture, from tool-making to rock art, it didn't just pop into existence. It co-evolved as an essential, life-saving cognitive technology.
Okay, let's start there with this new story of survival. We're talking 2, maybe 3 million years ago on the African savanna.
Right.
For most of the 20th century, the picture was the Washburn-Isaac synthesis. The idea of organized big game hunting, home bases, provisioning.
That whole man-the-hunter model.
Exactly. And that whole model, which really put hunting at the center of our origins, it's pretty much collapsed, hasn't it?
It has, completely. The data just doesn't line up.
Right.
When we look at the archaeological signature, the evidence for sustained large-scale hunting just isn't there.
And it was always a bit of a stretch, right? The idea of a small hominin taking on these giant predators.
A huge stretch. Think about it. You're up against giant hyenas, lions, these massive machairodont cats. Organized hunting is incredibly high cost, incredibly high risk.
So the debate now is about how they achieve the hominin predatory pattern, or HPP, this consistent eating of large animals. Passive scavenging must have been part of it.
Oh, for sure. Low cost, potentially high return if you get lucky, but that doesn't explain the big technological shift.
So what's the missing link between just, picking up scraps and actually hunting?
This is where the percussion scavenging model comes in. And it fundamentally changes where we even look for the evidence.
Okay.
It argues that early hominins, they didn't initially rely on making sharp flakes to cut the outside bone nutrients.
Right, the meat.
Exactly. Instead, the critical evolutionary step was focusing on extracting the inside bone nutrients.
The marrow in the brain.
Your marrow and the brain, incredibly rich in fats and calories. And they got to it using percussion, just pounding the bones open with rocks, like giant nutcrackers.
So it wasn't about getting a steak. It was about getting this incredibly dense nutrient package that no one else could access.
That's the idea. It suggests this focus on marrow and brain came first. It emerged independently of making those really refined cutting tools.
It's an efficiency strategy.
It's the original work smarter, not harder. Why risk a fight over muscle when you can just smash and grab the densest calories on the savannah?
And that changes what archaeologists are looking for, because we've all heard about cut marks on bones.
Right, but cut marks can be really misleading. There's this issue called equifinality.
Equifinality.
It just means that lots of different things can cause a similar mark. A predator's tooth, an animal trampling the bone, it can look a lot like a stone tool cut mark.
So it's ambiguous.
Very. Percussion, on the other hand, leaves a unique signature. Specific fracture patterns, actual percussion marks, you can't really fake that.
And when does that kind of clear evidence start to appear?
Well, we see some really controversial marks at Tikika around 3.4 million years ago. But they're still being debated. It could be butchery, trampling, even crocodile bites. The really systematic, undeniable evidence for this behavior doesn't show up globally until after 2.0 million years ago.
Okay, and this is where it gets really ingenious, because exploiting a huge carcass, even just for the bones, creates a huge social problem.
A massive problem. It's time-sensitive and incredibly dangerous.
You can't do it alone.
No way. A single hominin finds a dead rhino. Great. But they can't possibly defend it from a pack of hyenas long enough to get anything. You need a team.
And to get that team, you need to communicate.
And not just in a simple way. You needed a huge cognitive leap, something we call displaced communication.
Displaced communication. What does that mean in this context?
It's the ability to communicate about something that is not right here, right now. It's not just pointing and grunting.
It's abstract.
Very. You have to be able to convey, hey, there's a dead animal, it's big, it's about a mile in that direction, and we need 4 people and some good pounding stones to deal with it now.
Wow.
That pressure cooker environment, needing to mobilize a team for a resource that only exists in your memory, is what made complex communication an absolute survival necessity.
That is the perfect bridge to our next section. Because that need for complex, abstract communication, that's the engine driving the coevolution of the mind and, well, symbolic thought.
Absolutely. The need for that kind of coordination demanded serious cognitive horsepower, and we can actually see the structure of that thought in the tools themselves.
Even the really early ones.
Even the earliest, the Oldowan tradition, starting around 2.6 million years ago, making even a simple Oldowan flake tool shows what we call hierarchical structure in cognition.
Hierarchical structure, so you mean like a plan with multiple steps.
Exactly. It's the ability to nest levels of action. It isn't just random bashing. There's a sequence.
A kind of grammar for action.
That's a great way to put it. You have to think ahead. First, I need to find the right kind of rock. Then I have to hold it just so. And only then do I make the final strike to get the flake I want.
That's temporal abstraction, planning across time.
And it links directly to the prefrontal cortex. So the physical tool is basically a mirror of a deeply structured hierarchical thought process happening inside the brain.
And once you have that cognitive scaffolding for rules for tools, rules for communication, you can apply it to much more abstract things.
You can. And that's where we start to see the roots of what we'd call structured belief systems.
So let's look at the deep history of religion. Using phylogenetic studies, like a family tree of beliefs, what's the oldest, most foundational trait?
The oldest and most fundamental trait, the one present in the last common ancestor of modern hunter-gatherers, was animism.
Animism. So the belief that everything has a spirit or agency. Rocks, rivers, animals.
Precisely. It's the idea that the world is filled with conscious agents, not just inert stuff. And it seems to be the necessary psychological base for everything that follows.
What does the mapping show? How do these ideas build on each other?
The sequence seems to be animism first. That then allows for a belief in an afterlife, because if a rock has agency, why can't your own agency continue after death?
Right, that makes sense.
And from there, you get the social complexity of shamanism and formal ancestor worship.
And what about the idea of a high god? Where does that fit in?
That's what's so fascinating. The concept of a high god seems to evolve independently. It can pop up anywhere, regardless of whether those other traits are present.
And shamanism specifically, it's not just about the spiritual side. It plays a huge social role, doesn't it?
A massive role. The shaman is a ritual leader, a healer. They manage crises, sure, but on a functional level, they reinforce social norms, they build cooperation. That's crucial when resources get scarce.
This loops back to the idea of cognitive structure.
Yeah.
You mentioned competence theories from linguistics.
Yes. This is a really powerful way to understand it.
So how does a theory about grammar help us understand ritual? Are you saying the rules for a language are somehow the same as the rules for, say, a complex ceremony?
In essence, yes. The underlying structure. Competence theory argues that our brains have these intuitive grammatical principles, and they're domain general.
Meaning they're not just for language.
Not at all. They help us generate and judge any systematic, rule-based structure, whether it's the sequence for making a tool, the syntax of a sentence, or the prescribed actions of a ritual. Our brain has the hardware to recognize when the grammar is correct.
So if an Oldowan tool shows that structure in action, then rock art is like a direct window into the symbolic mind that used those rules to create meaning.
Exactly. This art wasn't just decoration. Researchers call it an epistemic technology.
A technology for knowing, for surviving.
And the longevity of these sites is the proof. Take Cueva Honol 1 in Patagonia. They've used radiocarbon dating on the charcoal pigment. They found evidence of continuous painting for 8,200 years.
Wow. 8,000 years. That's over 130 generations of people returning to the exact same spot to make art.
And this period of art making coincided with extreme climate change, arid conditions, potential population crashes.
So the art couldn't have just been a hobby. It had to be doing something essential.
It was a distributed memory bank, a mnemonic device for passing on vital ecological knowledge, for maintaining group cohesion when people were scattered and stressed. It was a way to make sure collective memory outlasted individual lives.
And it wasn't just transmitting data, was it? There's evidence the art was designed to manage emotions.
Oh, absolutely. In the central Indian rock shelters, you see this clearly. Intense battle scenes might have been used to evoke anxiety or aggression to prepare people for conflict.
And hunting scenes.
Dynamic hunting scenes probably evoked thrill, adrenaline, but then fascinatingly, you see depictions of pregnant animals.
Which would evoke what?
Empathy? Empathy, compassion. Perhaps it was a way to regulate hunting, to maintain a deep relational connection with their prey.
So to understand what this art means, we have a few different frameworks. The neuropsychological model is a common one.
Right. This model links some of the geometric patterns you see everywhere, spirals, zigzags, grids, to phosphenes.
Phosphenes. Those are the light patterns you see when you close your eyes and press on them.
Exactly. They're patterns produced by your own nervous system, and they're often seen during altered states of consciousness.
Which were sometimes deliberately induced.
Yes, we have ethnographic evidence for that. The Chumash in California used the hallucinogen datura. People near the Pecos River used mescal bean. In this framework, the art is a record of an internal spiritual journey.
But there's a deeper framework, one that connects back to animism. You call it animist ontology.
And this is critical. It's a non-Western framework that just dissolves the split we make between culture and nature, or subject and object.
So in this worldview,
In an animist ontology, animals, plants, even the decorated tools and the rock art itself, they are all seen as conscious persons with their own agency. They aren't just resources, they're other subjects in the world.
so the art isn't just a record of a spirit journey.
No. The art becomes a method of negotiation with these non-human persons. It's an active dialogue. You're trying to ensure cooperation, appease spirits, ask for a successful hunt.
Let's apply this to a case study up in the Bering Strait region with the prehistoric Eskimo cultures.
Yes, the Okvik and Old Bering Sea, or OBS, cultures. Their art is completely dominated by sea mammal hunting centralism. Walrus, seals, whales.
And there's one symbol that's everywhere.
The circle dot motif. When you look at Eskimo cosmology, this simple design is incredibly powerful. It can be a spiritual eye, a joint mark on an animal, a passage between cosmic worlds, or even a map of the universe.
And they put this on their hunting tools.
All over them. But here's where we see this profound transition in the archaeology. The mysterious half-human, half-animal imagery that decorated all those OBS ivory tools, it just disappears in the later Puruk and Thule cultures.
It just stops. A complete stylistic break.
It does. And this stylistic shift correlates almost perfectly with a huge change in their architecture, the emergence of the kashik.
The men's communal house.
Exactly. A dedicated, public, ritual space.
So the art moves off the personal tools and into the communal building.
The evidence strongly suggests the venue for spiritual power changed from the personal to the collective. In the OBS period, power was in the individual hunting charms, the decorated harpoon head in your hand.
And when the Koski emerges,
When you have this dedicated communal space, the spiritual expression seems to shift. It moves away from decorating individual tools and towards creating these large, spectacular wooden masks used in ceremonial dances held inside the Koski.
so the community starts investing its spiritual energy into a shared ritual reality, not just personal amulets.
That's the argument, a shift from personal magic to public ceremony.
So when we put all this together, the scavenging, the hierarchical thought, the symbolic art, what's the big picture? Our ancestors weren't defined by brute strength.
Not at all. They were defined by versatility. They were clever opportunists who survived by developing these incredibly complex symbolic systems.
And these systems, language, art, ritual, they weren't just for show. They were for managing social stress and transmitting knowledge across thousands of years.
And if we tie this back to that cognitive scaffolding, to the competence theories, it shows that the basic psychological hardware for cultural complexity was already there. That inherent ability to find and create grammar in the world is what allowed these symbolic systems to persist for 8,000 years in one place and to completely restructure themselves in another.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought.
Yeah.
Considering that powerful shift we just discussed in Eskimo ritual, from decorating personal hunting tools to creating these huge masks for communal performance inside the Koschik, does this suggest a key part of our evolution was this gradual move away from reliance on individual spiritual power
On personal charms.
and towards the establishment of a collective social and ritual reality? What does it mean for a society when it starts investing its spiritual capital in the shared house instead of just a personal tool? Something for you to think about until our next deep dive.